Yo, what's going on, guys? Today, if you were sleeping under a rock and you didn't know, the Guardian Takedown's coming out. We have the full patch notes here finally, and I'm gonna go over them with you. So, let's hop straight into it. So, obviously, the Guardian Takedown's coming out. One thing is the Revenge of the Cartel event officially ends today. You guys still have a couple hours if you want to hop in and get your OPQ system or your yellow cake. But let's move on. So yeah, the Guardian Breach is coming out. By the way, this patch will go live at 9 a.m. Pacific, and it should be on every platform by 12 p.m. Pacific. So the first thing they mentioned is the Fight for Your Life improvements. They added co-op reviving, where more than one player can actually revive you quicker. That is actually really cool. You get a movement speed penalty for down players. This is to help them not crawl away from you. An increased radius for down players to make it easier to start reviving them. And they also added the visual effects to the down player being revived and the player reviving the down player to help visualize the act of reviving. And yeah, so those are all the Fight for Your Life improvements. Those are pretty cool. I don't really play co-op, so Next, they added Mayhem levels on item cards. Now, I believe this was supposed to come originally, but it was just bugged. So your Mayhem level is finally on your item card. Next, they have a bunch of stability fixes. I'm not actually going to read each one of these because it's just kind of a bunch of random fixes. But yeah, they are optimizing the stability and the optimization, which they also added a bunch of optimization fixes. If you guys want to know these exact fixes, I will link the patch notes in the pinned comment, so look out for that. But yeah, just a bunch of stability and optimization fixes. Next, addressed a reported concern that the camera would sometimes tilt sideways when using high fire rate weapons and strafing at the same time. They disabled all controller input when the game window is not in focus on PC. They disabled access to the quick menu when players are in vehicles or turrets. They addressed a reported concern that an outrunner can sometimes be launched into the air and out of playable space when a user enters the vehicle. Addressed a reported concern that the bodies of dead enemies would sometimes stretch when inside the elevator in Conrad's hold. That's actually kind of weird. Addressed a reported concern that the host player can escape the map when crouching in the doorway of a client's room when they leave their session in Sanctuary. Addressed a reported concern that hitting an out-of-bounds area with a vehicle would trigger Fight for Your Life. Adjusted the cost of ammo at vending machines to derive from the player's level instead of the vending machine's level. That's interesting. Addressed a concern that pinstripes and filigrees were sometimes missing from player skins. This one's weird, and I'm gonna test this one. Addressed a reported concern that the 300% damage anointment didn't work properly with non-flesh enemy types. Now, this was actually a rumor that got spread around when this anointment first came out, and I actually debunked this in a video. So I'm going to test this as soon as I can, and I'll probably make a specific video about this anointment, whether it's changed or not, and I'll let you guys know about that because I am curious what they did to it, considering that this was just a rumor that got debunked. Next, addressed a reported concern that Guardian perks would only be considered active during the session you unlock them in. Addressed a reported concern that elemental puddle decals would sometimes remain for clients when reloading the map. Updated the credits, added previous hotfixes to the game, thank you. Addressed a reported concern where the hint bar would appear spaced out and stretched across the bottom of the screen in the skill tree menu. And finally, addressed a reported concern that the play button in the Echolog menu would sometimes be displayed incorrectly. It looks like they fixed a couple things with Borderlands Science, that's pretty cool. Addressed a reported concern that the operative's action skill anointed effects can be affected by other action skills when activating two action skills at the same time. Now this is pretty interesting. I don't know what they're referring to. It's possible they're referring to the Digiclone ammo regen anointment that used to run out. That would just run out after a certain amount of time. I don't know if that was affected by other action skills. I really don't know what they're talking about here, but there were a couple bugs with some Zane action skills. So of course, I'll hop into the game and figure this stuff out for you guys and make another video later. Moving on. Just some stuff with the Mox Tails and the rare chest events. Next, addressed a reported concern where smoke or steam would flicker in Sanctuary after extended gameplay. Alright, moving on to the good stuff. Mayhem 2.0 they rebalanced the Mayhem stats for enemy health, shields, and armor. Basically, Mayhem 10 used to be 12,500% health, armor, and shields. They lowered Mayhem 10 all the way down to 10,000%, and they basically fixed 7 through 10, the curve upwards, because if you guys didn't know, Mayhem scaled dramatically upwards, so it's going to be more of a normal curve. Next, this reported concern. Oh my god, thank you guys so much. They fixed Agonizer 9000, they fixed the Kraken and Wotan's legs, and they fixed Aista. Thank you for fixing these things. They actually didn't say they actually said they were going to fix chests, vending machines, mail rewards in the next patch. So the fact that they specifically fixed these bosses in this patch, I'm happy. While we wait for chests and vending machines to support Mayhem level gear in the next patch, these enemies were fixed. Okay, yeah, perfect. The Mayhem modifier's mob mentality and chain gang can no longer be rolled together. That's actually a good one. I think some of this caused some stability issues, and it was kind of annoying. The Mayhem modifier Flora's Lava now fires off less frequently, and the damage taken no longer counts towards keeping the player in combat. Oh, okay. So yeah, they fixed some of the bugs with the Flora's Lava, and it'll just be less punishing. Pretty much, the Flora's Lava could deal a lot of damage to you at higher Mayhem levels. I'm not exactly sure what the damage was based off of originally. The Mayhem modifier Chain Gang now creates beams when the player is closer and dissipates when further away, allowing them to fire less frequently. This will kind of help with that visual clutter, the optimization, and the lagginess of the game. Basically, if you're not close to enemies, you're not going to see Chain Gang. And that's a really cool fix. I hope they continue to do stuff like that for optimization, and also just for that visual clutter. Optimize combat timer refresh for Mayhem. I'm not gonna lie, I have no clue what they're talking about there. The 4 changes above were made to keep Mayhem 2.0 running smoothly. We will continue to monitor the performance of Mayhem 2.0 and make adjustments in the future. Buddy System and Drone Ranger are continuing to go through testing and are not going to be turned back on at this time. Wow, so it sounds like they turned off Buddy System. They turned off Drone Ranger a while ago. Some of you might not actually know what this Mayhem modifier does, but it'll be coming back into the game soon enough. Addressed a reported concern that players would sometimes not load incorrectly after throwing grenades and making changes to Mayhem mode. Addressed a reported concern that the travel countdown timer would sometimes not display the map name when applying Mayhem modifiers after the player activated a new use station. Addressed a reported concern that the numerical indicator on the Mayhem pedestal would not display properly after adjusting the level. Addressed a reported concern that the UI for boundary turrets warning would remain on screen when changing Mayhem settings while in restricted areas. Addressed a reported concern that the enemy death from the post-mortem Mayhem modifier was unable to cause damage to Moses' auto bear or to players in Iron Bear's gunner seat. I wonder if that's a typo, possibly, because death could kill you through Iron Bear. So I wonder if they reverse that. Addressed a reported concern that death would circle in place if spawned from an enemy that the player did not take down. Yeah, that was kind of funny. Added a limit to the number of visual impact effects spawned when projectiles take damage with post-mortem and freeze tag Mayhem modifiers. I love these fixes, the visual stuff. There is a lot of visual clutter in this game, so when they fix stuff like this, I love it. Post-mortem, Healy Avenger, and freeze tag will now check for the dying enemy's allegiance relative to the player when deciding if they should spawn. That's interesting. It sounds like there was just a couple issues. Addressed a reported concern that the player could be briefly put into fight for your life when Roguelite is active. Oh, so I think you're not going to be able to use like Guardian Angel and Zane's Old You. Or like the, what is it? Too Angry to Die. The Too Angry to Die Guardian rank could actually keep you in fight for your life with Roguelite active. It sounds like Roguelite is just gonna kill you now. That's kind of cool. This is supposed to be a very hard modifier, and there were kind of ways to exploit this. Addressed a reported concern that beams spawned from boundary issue Mayhem modifier could sometimes become visually attached to the player. Okay, cool. Addressed a reported concern that beams spawned from boundary issues would sometimes stay attached to the player. Okay, cool. Addressed a concern that a beam effect would sometimes not trigger if there was an obstruction between the player and the enemy. Addressed a concern that some heads were sometimes not scaling properly with the Galaxy Brain. That's kind of funny. Addressed a concern that Mayhem modifier abilities would occasionally not run properly on enemies. Okay, cool. Addressed a concern with weapon drops from enemies downed via crits while the loot explosion Mayhem modifier was active, not matching the current Mayhem level. That's awesome. Loot explosion. All these fixes I thought were going to come with phase 2, but it sounds like loot explosion. Well, we know loot explosion wasn't scaling, and now it apparently does. Vehicles can now be the targets of Mayhem modifiers. Oh no. Addressed a reported concern where D-pad glyphs to change the track mission were still displayed. Addressed a reported concern where an empty prompt would be displayed on the HUD above the experience bar. Addressed a reported concern where multiple message slide-outs would appear and overlap after disconnecting a controller. Addressed a reported concern where the speed of the UI menu would vary when adding split screen. Addressed a reported concern where the client's countdown would not appear. Guys, I just don't want to miss anything important. That's why I'm actually reading these not important ones. Added improvements to text chat. That's always cool. Updated hint text for changing the viewed event to change viewed event. Addressed a reported concern that parts of the HUD would sometimes be missing when quickly pausing and resuming the game. Yeah, like the ammo would disappear sometimes. Okay, looks like they added some hot fixes. This is normal. These are changes that they wanted to change after they submitted the patch. Added Revenge of the Cartel anointments to the permanent drop pool for gear. I love it. I'm so glad they decided to keep the cartel anointments. Addressed a reported concern that spikes from manticores ignored Zane's barrier. Thank you. Rebalance the number of enemies active at one time during takedown at the Guardian Breach. That's interesting. Rebalance the health of some enemies during takedown at the Guardian Breach. This is from testing before they actually released this stuff. Addressed a progression blocker when fast traveling during the Guardian Breach. Addressed a concern where the operative sentinel was not targeting enemies in some cases. Okay. All right, now we are on the weapon adjustments. As stated in the patch notes, we have adjusted the health, shield, and armor. As part of that change, we need to adjust gear. With the decrease in enemy health, all the gear you have currently will feel more effective as you take down enemies in those higher levels. SMGs have proven to be one of the most popular weapon types, so we focused on them with this update. That's so cool, actually. That they did that based on what we play, because we do play a lot of SMGs. We decided that this amount of change was all we were comfortable with. When paired with the scaling, we will observe player feedback. Yeah, so they're going to change more stuff in the future as well. So they buffed the bitch. Hashtag buff the bitch. They buffed the handsome jackhammer, the devoted, the cloud kill, the tsunami, the 10-gallon, and the melee bonus on the Ripper. The Ripper's melee damage bonus wasn't providing enough incentive to execute its gameplay loop. We have buffed the damage on the melee strike. That's actually pretty cool. Like, I don't know what this is actually going to be, but I like these sort of gameplay loops. The base damage for Vanquisher and its bonus damage while sliding have been buffed. Like the Ripper, its core loop wasn't being used as the side bonus wasn't significant. So they increased the bonus damage while sliding on the Vanquisher. I actually like the Vanquisher. I'm going to be using this one. I'll tell you guys if this is worth it. Weapon nerfs. We found that a few pieces of gear were overperforming or not working as intended, which unintentionally pushed players into builds exclusively using them. Very true. It also allowed players to bypass the intended growth of moving up the Mayhem levels over time. Also very true. By lowering these values and addressing some data, players should be able to experiment with other pieces of gear. Now, just so you guys know ahead of time, these nerfs are also coming with the Mayhem scaling nerfs. So yes, these guns were nerfed, but they were already overperforming, and they lowered the Mayhem scaling. So a lot of these should just feel the same. The Sandhawk was creating too many particle systems, which we found created issues related to performance. It also was creating too much damage relative to other sniper rifles. To combat this, we've made the following changes. Increased shot costs from 2 to 3. We have increased the cost of firing the weapon so that the players have to more thoughtfully manage ammo. With additional SDUs that were added in the Cartels patch, players should be able to still use this weapon quite a bit. Now, this is mainly a bossing weapon in my opinion. unless you're like ammo regen Moes and stuff like that. So realistically, this isn't that bad. They removed 2 projectiles, so the Sandhawk damage was basically nerfed from ×9 to ×7. That is about a 20% damage decrease. As stated, the performance cost of this weapon was too high, so we removed 2 particle systems from each shot. This also removes some damage. Yep. Increased accuracy spread to make up for the difference of missing projectiles, so it still covers the same space. Lowered the lifetime of projectiles. Too many active particle systems from consecutive shots was hurting performance, so we've lowered the lifespan of the projectile. Increased the projectile speed. It was important to use to keep the weapon still effective in combat, so to counter the lowered lifetime, we've sped them up. The result is a weapon that still feels as effective as before and even more responsive. So this is kind of cool. The Sandhawk kind of wasn't really good from a further distance. It sounds like the projectiles will still disappear at the same distance, but it's going to fire faster. Like, the actual projectiles are going to move faster, so you're going to be able to use this a little bit more accurately from a longer range, which is pretty cool. We discovered an unfortunate issue with the yellowcake that effectively added an extra 100% damage beyond its intended output. We are fixing that today. Change damage scaling. The wrong scaling math was applying to the yellowcake, greatly increasing its damage beyond its intended value. We are changing it to use intended math. Split projectile damage decrease. We are lowering the damage of each of its split projectiles as they were overperforming as well. So the yellowcake got nerfed a little bit, but that is fine. I actually wanted them to do this. I didn't want a ammo nerf. Because this is we don't have many good rocket launchers that actually only use like 1 to 2 ammo per shot. And I'm glad they left the ammo alone. I seriously am. The yellowcake is so strong. A damage nerf is going to be okay. It's going to feel more balanced now, and I'm perfectly fine with that. The Chaos In was providing more power than intended, which made it the go-to SMG. With today's changes, it should still provide plenty of damage that focuses on explosive damage bonuses, but not quite at the scale as in the past. Accuracy Impulse increased. Its accuracy allowed players to deal pinpoint damage. Then with the added explosive damage, it was further maximizing output. We are increasing the Accuracy Impulse to account for the explosive damage bonus better. Max accuracy increased. At full auto, the spread proved exceedingly tight, again allowing more damage to be maximized than we intended. We have increased the maximum accordingly, so it's going to be a little bit less accurate at full auto. Keep in mind, this will make the burst variant and the tap fire variant a little more potent, because you're going to be able to keep the accuracy on those versions better. Crit damage reduced. The explosive damage provided by this weapon allows critical hits more frequently, so we are lowering its crit bonus by a small amount. Base damage decreased, as the Chaos In basically has 2 points of damage, the initial bullet, and then the explosive round. It was providing way more damage than a typical SMG. We're lowering the base damage. Now, once again, keep in mind, the Mayhem scaling is coming down, so even though they nerf the damage a little bit, it'll kind of be balanced by the fact that the Mayhem scaling is actually coming down. Finally, this looks like the end of the patch notes. Anointment buffs, thank you. Several anointments in the game were not providing enough value, effectively making them non-viable. In an effort to increase build diversity, we are buffing anointments. Airborne anointments. We have increased the effectiveness of airborne damage, crit damage, and fire rate. The airborne fire rate had a bug as well, which is being fixed. To substantially improve this anointment, we are anxious to see what builds will be used in the Guardian Breach in particular. Now guys, if you didn't know, the airborne and sliding anointments are fully multiplicative, so depending what they buff this by, this is a very, very strong choice. Even if they raise this from like 30 to 60%, you guys should actually use these anointments. I fully recommend them. They are very strong. I'll probably make a specific video about how to utilize these correctly as well. The airborne anointment's a little bit tricky, and I will talk about that later. Sliding fire rate, it had a bug as well that prevented it from providing the intended bonus. We've resolved that in these hotfixes. Now, I remember during the Bordercast, they also mentioned sliding damage. I wonder if they actually buffed the sliding anointment or not. We'll find out later. Action skill end, a number of these anointments have been buffed to make them more useful. Fire rate, next to mag bonus damage, and splash damage have all increased buffs. Now, 125 ASE splash was already very strong. Honestly, along with these next two mags, the next two mag was a very good anointment, but it was just outclassed by like Sentinel Cryo. Like, why would I use 50% next two mags when I have 100% Sentinel Cryo? So these two anointments will make a strong comeback in my opinion, especially like the next two mags for Moes and stuff. Anyways, finally, auto bear active incendiary damage. This has received a significant buff to make Iron Bear builds more effective. Pull out your Rocketeer class mods and start using this anointment. Rocketeer is actually better than a lot of people realize. You just kind of have to build around it a bit more. And yeah, that is the end of the patch notes. I cannot wait to hop into Guardian Takedown. I am super excited. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications. I'm going to post a couple more videos today, and I post Borderlands 3 content all the time if you guys don't know me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. I'm out.